Hey folks, welcome to This Week in History. I'm a squirrel, you're a person, let's do this thing. On May 10th in 1775, Benedict Arnold and Ethan Allen led a successful attack on Fort Ticonderoga during the American Revolution, taking the fort and making the folks back in England none too happy. The victorious patriots drank all the fort's alcohol, updated the furniture, and started producing pencils. In 1849, the Astor Place riot broke out outside the Astor Opera House in New York City.
New York City!
That's what I said.
Get a rope.
And that escalated quicker than I'd like. So the whole riot started as a disagreement between who was the best Shakespearean actor. Edwin Forrest, the first American theater star, or William Macready, an English theater star. And yeah, a lot of it had to do with America versus England and the lower class that supported Forrest versus the upper class that supported Macready. Between 22 and 31 people died and several hundred were injured over Shakespeare. I get he's a literary treasure if he even actually existed, but still, come on guys. In 1869, the Golden Spike was driven at Promontory Summit, Utah, completing the first transcontinental railroad. Of course, they replaced it with a real spike because, let's be honest here, I don't care if it's Utah or not, somebody's gonna steal that thing. On May 11th in 1846, President James K. Polk formally asked for a declaration of war against Mexico. What followed was, you guessed it, the Mexican-American War, and yeah, America won that one. In 1880, the Muscle Slough tragedy took place at a farm outside Hanford, California, between local settlers and the Southern Pacific Railroad over land rights, resulting in 7 deaths. You could pronounce it Muscle Slough, but Samson Simpson, I'm sticking to my story. This incident ended up being the inspiration for Frank Norris's 1901 novel, The Octopus. And if you've never read any Frank Norris, you should go read some Frank Norris. Full disclosure here, he's my favorite writer, but it's still great stuff. On May 12th in 1689, Britain joined the Grand Alliance against France, starting the 9 Years' War, or King William's War as we typically call it over here in the colonies. This was arguably the first World War. It's certainly the first global conflict, but put a pin in that because we'll come back to it in another video. And speaking of France, in 1797, Napoleon led French troops to capture the city of Venice during the War of the First Coalition. Also, real quick, don't forget to hit those likes in the description for good old Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And don't forget to hit that like button. Maybe that subscribe so you know when these tasty little gems are released, okay? Okay. Crap, did I say likes below? I meant links below. Come on now, I'm a squirrel. This isn't my first language. On May 13th in 1687, 11 ships full of convicts, and of course others that, weren't, set sail from England for Australia to establish the first penal colony there. These ships were known as the First Fleet. In 1861, Queen Victoria issued an official proclamation of neutrality as it pertained to the American Civil War. They recognized that the Confederacy existed. It wasn't simply a rebellion of American citizens, but they did not recognize them as a country. So basically they weren't part of America, but they weren't their own country. Britain also wanted to keep relations good between both sides, the Union and the South, mostly due to trade because they didn't like slavery, but man, that cheap cotton's hard to turn down. And of course, it was only cheap because of, survey says, slavery. It's sadly kind of like how nowadays most folks don't care what it took to get their cell phone batteries as long as they're affordable. And then there's this. Okay, then moving on. On May 14th of 1097, the Siege of Nicaea, or Nicaea, or Nicaea, or however you pronounce it, began during the First Crusade. Yep, check out that eye up there. And it ended with a Crusader victory on June 19th. No, this isn't where Juneteenth came from. That wouldn't make any sense. In 1643, Louis XIV is crowned King of France at the ripe old age of 4. His first official decree was for the invention of chicken nuggets. In 1878, the last American witchcraft trial began. Can you guess where it took place? That's right, Salem, Massachusetts, home of the fighting witch-finder generals. Go Gens! And though this was the last witchcraft trial, witch hunts sadly still continue. On May 15th in 392, Roman Emperor Valentinian II was murdered, most likely by one of his top generals, the same general that claimed Valentinian must have killed himself since his body was found hung. Nobody believed him, and if this sounds familiar, yeah, history repeats itself, folks. In 1792, France declared war on the Kingdom of Sardinia. Needless to say, Sardinia was a little salty. In military response, several thousand cans were conscripted and mobilized against the French. On May 16th in 1842, the first major wagon train to travel the Oregon Trail left Elm Grove, Missouri. It contained about 100 settlers, and no, we don't know how many died from dysentery. In 1866, the United States Congress established a new coin known as the nickel. This version, known as the shield nickel, was replaced in 1883 by the Liberty Head nickel, and no, the back doesn't show Liberty's tail. And finally, in births this week, we have Charles IV, Holy Roman Emperor in 1316, one of the greatest boxers of all time, Joe Louis in 1914, and Gustav I, the once and future King of Sweden, was born this week in 1496. And it looks like that's just gonna about do it for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here next week. Same squirrel time, same squirrel channel. Come check it out.